This is part 2, the techniques of mass submission. The purpose of the second part of this book is
to show various aspects of political and non-political strategy used to change the feelings and thoughts of the masses, starting with simple advertising and propaganda, then surveying psychological warfare in actual Cold War, and going on to examine the means used for internal streamlining of man's thoughts and behavior. Part 2 ends with an intricate examination of how one of the tools of emotional fascination and attack, the weapon of fear, is used and what reactions it arouses in men. Chapter 5. The Cold War Against the Mind. Only blind wishful thinking can permit us to believe that our own society is free from the insidious influences mentioned in Part 1. The fact is that they exist all around us, both on a political and a non-political level, and they become as dangerous to the free way of life as are the aggressive totalitarian governments themselves. Every culture institutionalizes certain forms of behavior that communicate and encourage certain forms of thinking and acting, thus molding the character of its citizens. To the degree that the individual is made an object of constant mental manipulation, to the degree that cultural institutions may tend to weaken intellectual and spiritual strength, to the degree that knowledge of the mind is used to tame and condition people instead of educating them, to that degree does the culture itself produce men and women who are predisposed to accept an authoritarian way of life. The man who has no mind of his own can easily become the pawn of a would-be dictator. It is often disturbing to see how even intelligent people do not have straight thinking minds of their own. The pattern of the mind, whether toward conformity and compliance or otherwise, is conditioned rather early in life. In his important social psychological experiments with students, Ash found out in simple tests that there was a yielding toward an erring majority opinion in more than a third of his test persons, and 75% of subjects experimented upon agreed with the majority in varying degrees. In many persons, the weight of authority is more important than the quality of the authority. If we are to learn to protect our mental integrity on all levels, we must examine not only those aspects of contemporary culture which have to do directly with the struggle for power, but also those developments in our culture which, by dulling the edge of our mental awareness or by taking advantage of our suggestibility, can lead us into the mental death or boredom of totalitarianism. Continual suggestion and slow hypnosis in the wake of mechanical mass communication promotes uniformity of the mind and may lure the public into the happy era of adjustment, integration, and equalization in which individual opinion is completely stereotyped. When I get up in the morning, I turn on my radio to hear the news and the weather forecast. Then comes the pontifical voice telling me to take aspirin for my headache. I have headaches occasionally, so does the world, and my headaches, like everyone else's, come from the many conflicts that life imposes on me. My radio tells me not to think about either the conflicts or the headaches. It suggests instead that I should retreat into that old magic action of swallowing a pill. Although I laugh as I listen to this long-distance prescription by a broadcaster who does not know anything about me or my headaches, and though I meditate for a moment on man's servility to the magic of chemistry, my hand has already begun to reach out for the aspirin bottle. After all, I do have a headache. It is extremely difficult to escape the mechanically repeated suggestions of everyday life. Even when our critical mind rejects them, they seduce us into doing what our intellect tells us is stupid. The mechanization of modern life has already influenced man to become more passive and to adjust himself to ready-made conformity. No longer does man think in personal values, following his own conscience and ethical evaluations. He thinks more and more in the values brought to him by mass media. Headlines in the morning paper give him his temporary political outlook. The radio blasts suggestions into his ears. Television keeps him in continual awe and passive fixation. Consciously, he may protest against these anonymous voices, but nevertheless their suggestions ooze into his system. What is perhaps most shocking about these influences is that many of them have developed not out of man's destructiveness, but out of his hope to improve his world and to make life richer and deeper. The very institutions man has created to help himself, the very tools he has invented to enhance his life, the very progress he has made toward mastery of himself and his environment, all can become weapons of destruction. The public opinion engineers. The conviction is steadily growing in our country that an elaborate propaganda campaign for either a political idea or a deep freeze can be successful in selling the public any idea or object one wants them to buy, any political figure one wants them to elect. Recently, some of our election campaigns have been masterminded by the so-called public opinion engineers, who have used all the techniques of modern mass communication and all the contemporary knowledge of the human mind to persuade Americans to vote for the candidate who is paying the public relations men's salaries. The danger of such high-pressure advertising is that the man or the party who can pay the most can become, temporarily at least, the one who can influence the people to buy or to vote for what may not be in their real interest. The specialists in the art of persuasion and the molding of public sentiment may try to knead man's mental dough with all the tools of communication available to them: pamphlets, speeches, posters, billboards, radio programs, and TV shows. They may water down the spontaneity and creativity of thoughts and ideas into sterile and streamlined cliches that direct our thoughts, even although we still have the illusion of being original and individual. What we call the will of the people or the will of the masses, we only get to know after such collective action is put on the move, after the will of the people has been expressed, or either at the polls or in fury and rebellion. This indicates again how important it is who directs the tools and machines of public opinion. And that was part 1 of chapter 5. We are in part 2 of the rape of the mind. And I will see you all in the next video.